Welcome to the Maintenance Community podcast for people who want to learn all things about maintenance and reliability. I'm your host, Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Upkeep. Each episode, I'll be meeting with an expert in the maintenance community to take a deep dive into topics that help elevate this entire industry. Our topics are sourced from the Maintenance Community Slack group, which is the largest online community of maintenance professionals all around the world. And today, I'm super excited to have Florian Ferrier here on the show. He also goes by Flo. That's a lot easier for me. Florian holds over 13 years of maintenance experience, is currently the co-founder and director of a company called MSApp, which is a software company where you can create and share video-based operations and maintenance instructions. Welcome to the podcast, Florian. I'm super excited to chat with you and have a good conversation about all things maintenance and reliability.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here with you and have that conversation with you. Hopefully we can make it interesting.
So the way that I always start this conversation off, obviously I know a little bit about you, Florian, got to know you over the past couple of months. Obviously have also learned a little bit more about what you're doing MSApp, which I think is really cool. But I'd also love to take a step back and learn a little bit more about your journey into maintenance reliability. How did you first get into this industry?
For me, I went to school in France. I'm originally from France. I went to school there and mechanical school. And then I jumped into new school that was dedicated to maintenance. So I really learned maintenance in school. And then because it was very new, I had that opportunity to be hired at Airbus plant in Toulouse on the final assembly line of the A330 mainly, but I've been working on other planes and other plants around aircraft industry. And so I did learn, maintenance, performing, maintenance the hard way, because those plants were far way more advanced than any other plant, I guess, in Europe, at least, 15 years ago. And then I have decided to move on and travel. And then I moved to Canada and then back in France a little bit. But I've been in New Zealand for 7 years now.
I also know that you've dedicated a more recent part of your career to company building, a lot of a very similar path that I also took too with Upkeep. You're building a company called MSApp. Obviously, I know what the company is about. I think it would be really interesting to share your founding story of MSApp, how you came to find this problem, and why you wanted to find and solve this problem with MSApp.
It's a long story, in fact, because I always try to be super efficient as a maintenance planner, which was mainly my role, in many companies and many of my journey. It was always the same issue, like building preventative maintenance. I've been building words-based instruction for years, and then it was always been a problem for me. I never liked it, and the way it was received, I always try to implement this. And then finally the technology came over through one of my best friends that is a developer, and he came and visit me in New Zealand. We had a few beers. It was a sunny day, and I said, look, I need to solve that problem. Can you develop this? And he said, yeah, of course I can. And then we tidy up and starting a prototype, and then 6 months later, we built a company, and that was it. Because at the time I was a consultant, so I had the privilege to test those little prototype on people and all that, and do all the research I need to build a pertinent product. So yeah.
So obviously you've dedicated this company towards improving the way that instructions are written and shared. And you've really picked video as the medium of choice for that. I'd be curious, what's some of the problems that you found within maintenance reliability industry? And also why you focus so much on instructions and video-based instructions.
So I really want to focus on one, tiny niche problem, and the problem that I know the best, and that was around instruction. We've done some research and testing, and mainly we find out that checklist text-based instruction were leaving a lot of space to assumption. So when you can be as clear as you want in the text instruction. Anybody that read it will take it, certainly differently, and then will translate it as a movement or as a operation on the machine differently. So that was very important. And then also we find out that most operator and technician are very visual minded, not necessarily, text based minded. Most of the technician and operator, they visually minded. It's harder for them to translate a text into an image And then once they have that image on the machine, to translate it in motricity, where video, when they watch it, they instantly identify the movement where it needs to happen on the machine. So it's a little thing, but when they do this all day long, yeah, it can be a big change. Yeah.
I think the big question that I have, and it's kind of funny. Earlier we were talking about like the aerospace industry leading the pack with the best world-class maintenance reliability practices. Why do you think more companies have not adopted this yet?
I think it's really come down to the technology point. Video management app is fairly new. I mean, 10 years ago, YouTube was small, like, for example, Netflix was renting DVDs, so, I mean, video and technology embedded in smartphone and everything is fairly new. TikTok and everything is just like 5 years old. People don't realize, but the technology is very new. So I think it's why it never been really explored. It is, but, not everywhere.
It's actually a really good point because, when I'm hearing about this, I'm like, man, like, it makes total sense. Why hasn't this been done yet? But you bring up a good point, Florian. Like the first iPhone just came out 10 years ago. YouTube hardly existed. These are all like new trends over the past, let's call it 5-10 years that enabled companies to move towards this like digital and video-based format. I'd be curious from you, Florian, what have been like some of the best implementations of implementing video-based instructions within a plant? Like, who does it the best? What do they do?
Yeah, it's not for everybody. That's what we find out. It is for people that really understand the benefits. So if you go, for example, if you go in a place where the preventative maintenance system is not in place, where checklists are not in place, they're not going to jump to video straight away. It has to be somewhere where it's a step-by-step evolution. If they have paper-based or checklist in place, then they're like, yes, it makes sense. So yeah, it's for efficient-minded maintenance managers or operation managers that are in the process to making the maintenance management better.
Maybe pivoting gears a little bit, Florian, obviously you talk a lot about like Industry 4.0. In one of your articles, you talked about industrial maintenance as a service. Can you explain to and share with me and our listeners what industrial maintenance as a service means, why it matters, and how the industry is changing as it relates to Industry 4.0?
I sort of came up with this. I mean, some few people on the internet are talking about this, but it's something that I guess I sort of name, but I'm not sure. Maintenance as a service is when manufacturers, so machine manufacturers, OEM manufacturers, will pivot their business model to sell maintenance as a subscription to their customers. Yeah, I've been a lot of research, talking a lot with manufacturers to understand why they not film the basic maintenance video, or why they not deliver this as it should be. And it's all about business model. They're not spending time where they can make money. Basically it's a business rule. Like if you don't get your investment back, then you're not spending too much time. So most manufacturer, and again, it's hard to, in such a short time to put everybody in the same basket, but most of the manufacturers will make money on their service, their spare parts, and maybe, and then the training. But until they don't find a way to replace this revenue, they have to, at the moment, spend a lot of money in connected sensors and so on, and digitizing their machine. And then once they pivot this, they can potentially sell the machine as a service, even lease some machine, like all included warranty. You pay, I don't know, $30 a day for a machine, and then you produce as much as you want. And then the machine will tell you, hey, stop the machine, clean this, and show you how to do this, and so on.
This is actually happening right now with a lot of
it is.
Our customers. If you think that this is where our industry is headed, which is like more manufacturers essentially managing the equipment that they sell as a service, if you think that's going to be the future trends, and if you think we'll see more and more of that in the future, and also how that will impact existing, let's call it, people in maintenance and reliability. What do you think that means for the industry?
Well, it means transformation for sure. And for sure, there will be way more technologies. So obviously, maintenance team will have to gear up with some more industry 4.0 minded people at some point, because it will have to happen. But I do think that maintenance will always start with a hand tool, because it is what it is. You at the end of the day, you can have the best sensor ever. If the sensor is not well positioned or so ever, you need somebody that manually put it back. It's like IT, actually. It started with developers and coding and so on, and 15 years later, still developers and coding, just not the same code, but just different developers, but they'll be there in 20 years.
One other article that I read from you, Florian, was you wrote about whether or not CMMS will survive through Industry 4.0. Again, obviously, It's a very it's a topic that means a lot to me, obviously, running a company called Upkeep. I'd love to hear some insight into why you think that, or what your thoughts are around, whether or not CMMS will survive through Industry 4.0.
Yeah, so as I was just saying earlier, there is a crazy amount of CMMS on the market. And at the moment, if I'm taking any average of what is a CMMS, I call it an aging technology in a saturated market, because, there is a trend for sure in the CMMS right now. I think mobility for the last, exactly when you came up, with Upkeep, like for the last 5 years, mobility has been a crazy move for the CMMS. And then you can already see on that landscape that the CMMS that can bring mobility, they age it. They're already part of the past, CMMS where you go in a plant where they're still printing all the work orders and so on. It's like, oh, you didn't move. You're still doing that, but, it's already a leap already on the age. So, there is many things that CMMS are we think they are will have to move and shift towards digital for sure. But for me, the biggest pinpoint of any CMMS at the moment will be, I call this empty shell. So when you get it, it's empty. So you have all that process to register your asset and so on. So I think a CMMS overall is also never updated. You can't, anywhere you go, people are keeping everything, all the assets tidy up as much as they can, but it will always, be slightly different from the reality, potentially, if you don't put a lot of process in place. The last point is the data integrity. People are picking wrong assets, wrong things when they're creating work orders and requests and so on, or they're taking shortcuts. So there is a lot of work around those three things to be done. And so I think that Industry 4.0 is sort of the answer to help the CMMS to get better at those three things. So, for example, we were talking about maintenance as a service. If you're buying a new machine, maybe the asset tree is already there on a CSV file, and then you can import it into your CMMS, or you can API it with your CMMS. And then, I know, for example, Upkeep is working a lot on this initiation into the CMMS. The fact that you have to set up everything is getting H2, and then that's where another leap will be created, where you can starting interface your CMMS with your manufacturers or your machines, or or the software. I think
what I hear from you is that some CMS companies are not going to survive this, Industry 4.0. No. But just like how the industry is adopting so much, so is technology for the industry. And we, as a CMS company, as an enterprise asset management software company, are prone to this change as well. And it's on us to also adapt to the changing times. Otherwise, we are, like you mentioned, going to be insignificant in just a few years from now.
And it's why, when I'm saying is CMMS will survive Industry 4.0, I'm talking about the CMMS as we know them, for the last 20 years.
And, there's a good chance that in another 20 years, it'll look completely different. And I'm excited about that. All right, Florian, we're just wrapping up on time. Would love for you to share a few areas and resources where you go to learn new topics and find new ideas. Where do you go?
I'm lucky enough to be a consultant, so I'm spending half of my time on the floor with people developing, installing upkeep sometimes, or developing maintenance processes and so on. I learn a lot from each and every one on the floor: technician, maintenance manager, new facilities, new factories. They always have good ideas to compile over there. I'm spending 1 or 2 hours a week talking with random people on LinkedIn that I found interesting, listening your podcast to, and being part of Slack community, can answer a few questions there and see interesting topic. It's always good.
Well, Florian, thank you so much for being part of our community. I know you also share a lot of content that you basically learn through going to different sites, different plants. Can you share with our listeners all the different ways that they can connect with you and follow you on your journey?
Yeah, well, if you can spell my name, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way on LinkedIn, or you can go on a website, maintenancesystem.app, and then contact me through the chat there.
Well, thank you so much, Florian, for joining us. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to today's episode of the Maintenance Community Podcast. My name is Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Upkeep. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at ryan@onupkeep.com. You can also find me and Florian, as you mentioned, on the Maintenance Community Slack group. You can feel free to follow up, ask any questions from today's episode, or also suggest future topics as well. You can sign up at upkeep.org, and I hope to connect with all of you soon. Until next time, thanks again, Florian.
Thank you very much, Ryan.